Welcome back to REI Basics. All right, today we're going to be looking at PropStream. So PropStream is an awesome piece of software for real estate investors of any type. It doesn't really matter if you're a wholesaler, a buy and hold investor, if you're into fix and flips. There's going to be some valuable options that you're going to find within PropStream. The main thing we're going to be looking at today is the search feature, building lists of potentially motivated sellers, filtering down that list to create more probability of motivation. You'll see what I mean here in a minute. And narrow down that marketing so you're saving marketing dollars and time, not going after very broad lists, but narrowing it down to really specific factors. There's a lot more you can do with this app. You can send direct mail right through the app. You can skip trace through the app, get emails and phone numbers. There's also a mobile app that has driving for dollars. So you can see my other videos to dive into each of those aspects of it. But today we're just going to look kind of a general overview of the search feature and some ideas of what you can do to find some motivated sellers of your own. So right off the bat, we need to find a target market. So we can search in this top bar here by county, city, zip codes, and we can put 5 in at a time or a specific property number. And you can also, if you're into very small markets like neighborhoods, you can draw in areas, but it can't be bigger than 250 square miles or it won't work if you're drawing on the map. So we're going to start with a county, and we're just going to look at Hillsborough County in Florida. So as that loads in, it's going to pull up all the property data that PropStream has off the bat here. And so if you look over here on the right, there's almost 500,000 properties that PropStream has data on. So obviously I don't want to just blanket mailers to 500,000 people. I want to try to find some motivation. So PropStream kind of pre-filters some lists if you want to kind of start there. You can see those numbers across the top. So there's 6,704 MLS listings. Then it shows pre-foreclosures, auctions, bank-owned, cash buyers, liens, vacant properties, and high equity leads. So there's 300,000 leads that are high equity. So again, I don't want to target just high equity because that's a lot of people to contact, and that's a lot of mailing expense, a lot of marketing expense. So I want to narrow down these lists. So in terms of criteria, there's no right way. It depends on what you're after. With PropStream, we want to try to create situations. We're not looking for a generic list. We're trying to look for specific people that are more likely to be motivated to sell. An example of that, maybe it's someone that has an active MLS listing and it's been on the market for 180 days and they have a lien on the property. Maybe they own a property free and clear, they're an out-of-state owner, and it's vacant. Maybe they're facing pre-foreclosure and they're having a divorce. So the more things you stack in, the higher the probability that there's going to be some distress there. Now, again, as you narrow down, you're also saving marketing dollars. You'll see what I mean here in a minute. So let's just tackle pre-foreclosures here for a minute. So if I click on the pre-foreclosures, that's going to bring up all of the pre-foreclosures in Hillsborough County. So if we look over on the right, that narrowed down my nearly 500,000 results to 3,302, just that same number that button shows. But now we want to dig in and try to find more specific properties. Now we can click in the filter button here. There's over 100 different filtering options that we can add into the mix. So let's say I don't care if they're owner occupied. And by the way, I'm not going to go through every single 100 items here. I'm just going to show some examples of some filtering that you might do. So I don't care if they're owner occupied. I don't care yet if it's vacant. I do care a little bit about the property. So first off, I want to make sure that it's a residential property. And for this example, I'm only interested in single family homes. I'm not a multifamily investor. So just doing that narrowed me down, took 300 or so properties off the list. So I've narrowed down some, but not nearly as specific as I want to be. And jumping down to ownership info, I also like to deal with individuals. I don't want to deal with trusts and corporations. They're harder to skip trace, harder to track down. So I just want to make sure I'm dealing with an individual. And as I click that, we dropped off a couple more hundred. So as you add more filters in, your number of properties available to you is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, but your list is becoming more and more targeted. So let's say, so as we're building in our filters here, you'll see your My Search here, and this kind of summarizes what you've done so far. So we're looking at pre-foreclosures for residential single-family individuals. So besides the fact that they're in pre-foreclosure, there's not much there for other forms of motivation, and pre-foreclosures is a pretty heavily marketed list. A lot of people have access to this data, or pre-foreclosure data, I should say. So a lot of people are mailing these 2,400 properties that are single-family residential pre-foreclosures. Going into property statistics, if I wanted to narrow down beds and baths, if myself or my buyers only want specific bedrooms, like they only want 3 2s, then I can put that filter in here. So let's do that for a second. Let's say our cash buyers, if we're a wholesaler, they only want 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So if we narrow that down, that's going to cut our properties way down. So if I know that my buyers are only looking for 3 2s, I don't want to mail to 2,400 people that don't meet that criteria. So the more criteria you can put in here, the more fine-tuned your targeting is going to be, and the more effective your marketing is going to be. You're not going to be wasting money sending mailers to properties that, yeah, they're in pre-foreclosure, but it's a 1-1 and it's not what I'm interested in or my buyers are interested in. So I want to target just what I'm looking for. And that's part of the beauty of PropStream. We can really narrow down and we can instantly see the results over here on the right in terms of what the filters are already finding. So we're going to stick with 3 2s for that, and you can see that updated in our My Search properties. So let's see if we add in some more potential distress here. So let's see if we add in that they have an active lien. What happens then? So now we're cut down to 197 properties. So these are pre-foreclosures that also have a lien against the property. So that narrows it down, and we're stacking potential motivating factors. So we're looking at pre-foreclosure, single-family residentials that are 3 2s, owned by an individual, and they have an active lien. I can be more specific in terms of the type of lien, so I can narrow down to specific things, like utility liens, for example. It's a really good option. If they're not paying their water bill, then there's probably some significant motivation there. So you can narrow down if you want to. Let's see if I click utility, what that changes. And in that case, this is an example of we've filtered down too far. So if we get too many filters in there, there's just going to be no properties that meet all that criteria. So if I uncheck there, I'm back to my 197 properties that have a lien on them. I can also put in the lien amount. Let's say I don't want to deal with properties that have more than a $5,000 lien against them. And that narrowed it down a little, but I want to make sure there's some motivations. Let's say I want to make sure they do have $1,200, and that narrowed it down a lot. So now I'm down to 60 properties that are in pre-foreclosure and have a lien between $1,200 and $5,000. So a number I can deal with, but not so overwhelming. They don't owe more than the property's worth, and it's just arbitrary. This, put your own numbers in here. But let's say that's going to be our search right now. So pre-foreclosures, single-family residential, 3 2, owned by an individual, has an active lien, and that lien amount is between $1,200 and $5,000. And that net result, once we close out of here, is we have 60 properties mapped out that meet that criteria. Now I can just save this list from here and mail to them immediately, and that can be all my filtering, or I can actually dig into each of these properties. Now some properties won't have a photo. That generally means that they haven't been on the MLS recently. If we do see photos, usually that means there've been some action on the MLS. Now one thing I didn't do in our filters is I want properties that are off market, that are not on the MLS. And this may change my number. This may be too dramatic, but I'm going to say not on market. And that only took one property off. So I still have 59 properties that are not on the market that meet all that other criteria. So let's click on one just to see what a deep dive into a property looks like. So looking at this property, we can look at PropStream's estimated value of $246,000. We see that their mortgage value is $203,000, and that they have a lien on the property for $1,300. We know from our search filter that they're in pre-foreclosure, and we can get into that data a little bit more here. So we have all these different options, and this is going to change based on what motivating factors are on the property. So in this case, we see pre-foreclosure, lien details, and MLS details. So like I said, there's pictures. It's been on the MLS recently, so we'll look at that in a minute. Those ones are going to change based on the filters you put in. The rest of it is usually going to be here. You can see comps, you're going to get the tax information, and the mortgage history. So if we look at this one, we can look at the mortgage, and we see that the last mortgage was in 2018 for $214,000, and now the estimated balance is $203,000, just like we saw up here. We can see their estimated payment, and we can reverse calculate their interest rate there as an estimate as well. And we can see it's an FHA loan, so they didn't put a lot of money down. They owe close to what this property is worth. So back to property details, we can just confirm that this was bought 2 years ago, and they bought it for $214,000 financed. And then clicking on pre-foreclosure, we can get into the details here that, yeah, they're facing pre-foreclosure. We don't know from this how far behind they are or any of that, but we can see what documents have been sent to them. So in March and in April, they were sent documentation regarding their pre-foreclosure. They've been sent that notice of lis pendens. Again, that's that initial sign that they're in trouble. So with this pre-foreclosure, we know that they also have this involuntary lien. So on top of the fact that they're behind payments, they also owe money to somebody else. So if we click on lien details, we can see that there's an abstract of judgment for $1,300. So they, just like we saw up here, they owe $1,300 for some reason that's attached to this property. And then just checking out the MLS to see what's gone on here. The status is sold. So this is the MLS listing from when the current owner bought it back in 2018. So that data is in here. PropStream's been digging data for 15 years on properties. So there's data that's going to go back years and years and years. In this case, we see that it was on the market for a certain number of days, and we can scroll down and see how long it was on the market, if the price dropped, any of that stuff, which for this property doesn't matter. But if it was recently on the market, they were facing foreclosure, and they had tried to sell it on the MLS, then that can tell us more information. So I'm really liking the looks of this property. We know there's several motivating factors. We know they don't have a ton of equity, so it's not going to be a traditional wholesale, but there are other options with this property. So I like the looks of this one, and I can save this individual property to my list, so I can save that here. I can add it to a specific group, but I'm not going to for this. And I can also write in different factors. Like, I read through all this stuff. You heard what I liked and didn't like. I can type those notes here for my quick reference later. I'm not going to type anything here today. So that's an example. And again, I can take all 59 of these properties. I can go through them one by one like that and really make sure that what I'm seeing is what I'm after. I can also, back to my filters, let's say I am a wholesaler and I want to make sure equity-wise that there's at least that 30% equity minimum. Otherwise, I'm not even going to touch it. So I can come in here and percent equity. Let's say we're going to say they have a minimum of 30% equity in the property. And I dropped it down to 33 properties. So if you're a strict wholesaler and you're working off the 70% ARV rule, of course you have to factor in repairs and your fee and all that too. But if they don't have at least that 30% equity to bring you down to your 70% or whatever number you're using in your market, you know it's wasted leads. In this case, I cut my leads about in half. I took almost 30 leads away that were less than 30% equity. So if I'm a straight wholesaler and that's my only model, and I'm mailing those other 30 or so potential leads, come to find out, hey, I only have 5% equity in my home. There's no way I can sell it to you for, the pennies on the dollar that you're asking because I owe more than you can offer. So you just narrow it down again, finding that needle in a haystack, but you're doing that ahead of time before you reach out to these people before you send your marketing, before you skip trace them. We cut down from our original number here of 3,300 foreclosures down to 33 that meet my criteria. And that just cut 99% of my marketing costs if I was going to mail all those pre-foreclosures versus this targeted list. Now, that's not to say that there's not going to be a lead in those other 99% of the pre-foreclosures that I've secluded here, but I'm increasing that probability that there's motivation here. And the foundation of every deal is, what is that seller's motivation? You're not going to get a big discount on a property for Sally seller that just wants to sell retail and has no motivating factors. But when you're facing these people that have their backs against the wall and they've got multiple things stacked up against them, multiple issues, then we've got some room to work with. We got a higher probability that there's going to be motivation. Okay, so that's one example of filtering. There's so many different things you can do. So let's do one more real quick. I'm going to clear out all my filters here. Cleared out my location. I'm going to stick with the same location, but I got to research for it. So I'm back to those same options across here. And let's say I want to deal with MLS properties this time. So I'm going to look for MLS properties. And again, I have 6,000 of them. So jumping into my filters here, I'm going to start off kind of the same way. I want to see residential, single family. And this time I want them to be on market, and their status, I want it to be active. And the minimum days on market, let's say I'm looking for properties that have been on market for a while. So the motivation may be changing. Let's say 90 days on market. Coming down to ownership info, let's make sure I'm dealing with individually owned again. And let's say they have a mortgage, so no free and clear properties here. But I can also exclude free and clear seller, owner finance properties, and cash buyers if I wanted to exclude them a different way. But adding in a mortgage generally does that. And then coming down to back up to equity, let's say I'm looking for properties that are on the MLS and there's a minimum of 50% equity. So I've dropped down to 77 properties that may be willing to do some negotiating. They've got 50%, they have 50% equity, so there's some room to wiggle there. They're trying to sell it, and it's been on market for 90 days. So that, it's a motivating factor. Is it motivating as the previous filter? Maybe not. But if I'm a buy and hold investor, I'm looking for a nice property that's all fixed up, but I just want to get a little bit of a discount, maybe I'm talking to these people. Maybe I'm reaching out to these realtors and I'm saying, hey, you've had this property for a while. It's coming close to expiring. Is there something we can do creatively here? What can I get 10% off? Can I make these numbers work for my investing? Now with this list, if it's something on the MLS and you're working through the realtor, one of the nice things is you have MLS access here, even if you're not an agent. So nationwide MLS access in over 85% of the MLS organizations across the country. So I can come in here, I can see the MLS description, I can see all the data about the MLS status here, and I can come right down to the bottom, and for this property I can get the agent's email address and phone number, and I can message them directly, no extra skip tracing costs or anything, and I can do all my searching the MLS right from here, but I can narrow down all my filters. So if you're, again, a buy and hold investor and you do buy off the MLS, this is a great way to narrow down that prospecting. Instead of looking at all 6,704 properties, I can put in my criteria, narrow this down to the properties that I'm most likely going to be interested in. Now I could, even if on the MLS, I could see if there's some pre-foreclosure properties here that might be even more motivated. So let's quickly look there. If we come to pre-foreclosure, instead of going to the full pre-foreclosure list, let's say we want to see that someone has a notice of default or that Liz Pendens. And now we've narrowed down to 3 properties here. So these are 3 properties that are actively on the MLS. They've been on there for 90 days and they're facing foreclosure. So now we've narrowed down those 77 properties to 3 properties, and these ones are probably much more motivated. So I can, again, save those and market to them directly. I can dig in here and see what's going on. So this property, they've got 107 nice photos here we can check out too. So I can look through the property, see how things look once this loads. And so I can look through all the images, see, oh yeah, this place looks pretty nice, right? So I can go right down through, this is not a fix and flip. This is already full retail. Maybe not the market you're looking for, but just showing you the information that's here. I can see that they're in pre-foreclosure. This one has a small lien, not very big. And again, they have 50% of their equity here, but they're still facing foreclosure. So is there some motivation there? They don't want to lose half their equity, but would they lose a quarter of their equity? Could you get this for 75% if you're a buy and hold investor versus, having to get it down to 60, 50% if you're a wholesaler? Is there room to work here? So again, just an option of how you can filter. You can work through the MLS data if you're a buyer that uses the MLS, and you can see all that data filtered down to, in this case, 3 properties that meet my criteria, what I'm looking for. So I'm going to wrap this video up there. Before you go, though, make sure you check out the link in the description to get your 7-day free trial. You don't want to miss out on that. It's 7 free days. You can download 50 leads for free. So just like I narrowed down to these small lists, I can export these, let's say 50 of them. I want to max out my free trial, and I can get all this data on 50 properties that I've narrowed right down to for free, essentially. Now, I don't want you to just use that free 7-day trial. I really think this program is valuable. And as I've shown, there's so much you can do to save yourself money. Instead of marketing, blanketing across huge areas, you're narrowing down to the more likely to be motivated to sell. Saving yourself time and money, and also narrowing down, cherry picking those deals. So again, the link in the description to get your 7-day free trial. It's $97 a month after that, and well worth it. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this video here. Thanks for watching. Hope you've learned something. Keep watching for more videos on real estate investing tools. If you have any comment suggestions, leave them down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.